Hello, and thank you for joining us for the very first episode of the Energize Colorado's Digital Innovation Initiatives marketing-focused series of podcasts. I know it's a mouthful. We're working on the name. It'll get better. This series of podcasts will be focused on helping businesses get online. Myself and a group of business experts have put together a curriculum to help businesses thrive. In this episode, we'll be covering 1. Why it is important to have an online presence. 2. Whether you need your own website and what other options you have. 3. Practical steps you can take to establish your online presence and other helpful tips related to websites. Hi, and welcome to a co-production of The Savvy Entrepreneur and Energize Colorado, where we're going to be talking about websites, all about websites. And today we've got some real experts to help discuss websites. We've got Lizzie, the CEO of Sidewalk. We've got Jared from Name.com. And we've got Keith, who's a web developer. So without further ado, let's start off with Lizzie introducing herself and talking about how Sidewalk helps businesses avoid having a website.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm the CEO of Sidewalk. Sidewalk is building a platform to enable and empower local businesses sell their products online, specifically retail. We're building an online marketplace that's geolocational focused. So imagine if you could go on Amazon and only find products from stores in your neighborhood. That's us. We're Sidewalk. So, and one of the things, our mission is really to help businesses expand their presence online. So it's great if they actually already have a website, but what we want to do is we want to increase the customer reach. And we can talk about this in a few minutes, but getting yourself discovered online can be complicated. And so really that's one of the problems that we're trying to help small businesses with, is creating a local audience, creating a marketplace where everybody can get visibility, and helping essentially customers shop local.
So thanks for having me. My name is Keith Roberts. I'm the founder of Zenman and Bigfoot, two agencies based here in Denver, Colorado. Our clients range from Frontier Airlines to Lumineers to a lot of restaurateurs. Frank Bonanno. I am the best guy in Colorado to go to dinner with, so definitely hit me up. You can reach me at keith@zenman.com, and thanks for having me.
Keith, do you buy when we go to dinner with you, or is it
even better, Jared? They
Uh-huh.
treat me like Michael Corleone, and they always cut my check. So we leave a fat tip for the server.
Wow.
But yeah, no, yes, I'm bi.
Well, then
It sounds like the four of us need to go get some dinner sometime.
yeah.
I think we need a post-podcast celebration, and
Yes, as soon as I get my vaccine. I have not left my house in a year, so I am on a list of friends and family. If a shot's going to go in the trash, I would have hung up and left mid podcast. But the phone didn't ring, so we're in good.
Lucky for us.
Well, I guess
right.
I'll do a quick intro. I am Keith's best friend and been that way for many years. I'll start another one if that doesn't segue perfectly. My name is Jared, and I have worked at Name.com for 10 years. I was a radio guy originally, and then all my friends were in tech, and then I realized much of my life was dealing with tech around me, and I was like, I should try this, and that's where I've been. It's been great. I had no idea. I thought tech was all developers and people that play Dungeons and Dragons and were on a kind of a higher mental plane than myself, but they need someone to communicate what they're doing, and we're doing good things, I think, at Name.com with domains and getting people online. It's a good company that really genuinely almost too much cares. Like we take too much time on some people. We're like, we'll help you. We will wrap you in our technical wings, our digital fronds, and take you places. And we're really passionate about it.
I had a customer service rep at Name.com spent 30 minutes helping me with several different SSL issues. So I definitely agree. You guys are great.
Yeah, no, I talked to a customer support agent the other day. She's like, I just had to help a guy with his Word doc. I don't know why you call this, and that's a sad statement on the tech industry. There's so many people out there using tech products, but there's no support for them. So please don't call us with your Word document issues, but we do have great support for our products.
Let's talk about whether every business needs a website, or whether there are some websites or some businesses that, as Lizzie talked about, don't necessarily need it because of the type of business they are.
Yeah, Lizzie brought up a really good point. I mean, prior to thinking this through, I own an agency for 24 years, right? We built Frontier's website, we built the Lumineers website, Mitsubishi, and we have clients from small restaurants up to enterprise billion-dollar organizations. But what I didn't think about, we were talking about, are those users that don't have a computer, that don't have the ability, even with Wix or Squarespace or a site that they could WYSIWYG something together, they don't have the technology to even do that. So I love what Lizzie's doing to empower those people within the community. I think there's a minimum threshold that, when you get there, if you can get online with any sort of presence, that's an exceptional first step. You can also do that with social. So I think, maybe there's an in between, but I love the jumping off point of, hey, this is a public declaration. I am a business. This is my product or service. Here is how you can find me. This is my business card that's working 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
Yep. Jared, what do you think?
Oh, I think Keith has an incredible room. I have room raider envy. I'm working on my office right now, and it looks like I've got a mannequin back there. There's kind of a murder basement motif going on, but you've inspired me. I think, we sell domain names at name.com, and we have an easy website builder. We have hosting options, a WordPress plugin that's very easy, but we've been around long enough, and I've been steeped in the marketing long enough that we're just a little tired of the rainbows shooting out of people's eyeballs about this stuff. Like, we had one time I brought in a mechanic, and I wanted him to just go through our site and try stuff. And after 20 minutes, he wanted just to set fire to the whole technological world. He's like, why do I have to do this? And I was like, you don't have to. And he had a wrench, and I was scared. No, that's a lie. But no, but but at that, we've worked with a lot of customers, and some of them have 100 domain names in their account, and they're doing something with one of them. And thankfully, they renew those every year. But there's this huge leap from getting from that idea to manifesting it into reality. And whatever we can do to help with that, we send people to Shopify a lot of times, or Squarespace. Like, you don't have to use their stuff. I can't wait to talk more with Lizzie about what they're offering. And I'm sure everybody's seen this in their experience, where people have the ideas. It's hard to execute. How can we make it easier? And that's where we are right now. Just help this. Yeah, get a domain name, but you're not at all. We're not going to try to upsell you on whatever else here, but let us know what you need, and maybe we can help with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Jared. As a name.com customer, and I've used your website builder for initially, then I graduated to WordPress. So love your product, love your service. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. And as a part of working with Energize Colorado, don't you guys have some promotional offers for people to visit name.com?
I'm glad you mentioned that. We have, if you go to name.com/energize, we have, I think we've about there's a lot of them, like 240 plus free domain names. A lot of these are the new true names is what they're called. And a lot of people haven't heard of these, but this is where you can get the actual keywords you want. I just interviewed a guy who has a website, mousepads.cool, and he's so stoked on his .cool domain name, and I'm talking to a woman this afternoon who has soul.camp, and that's an awesome domain name. So that's part of the package, and then you get discounts on hosting and websites.
Yeah, I mean, I think I love what Keith said. I love what Jared said. I think, there's so much information out there on the web, and there's so many platforms that you can use to have a web presence. And I think that's a really important distinction. There's a really big difference between having a website and having a web presence. And it really is a spectrum, and you can start really small or you can go really big. And I think one of the most important things to start out with is figuring out, where does your business fall on that spectrum? And one of the best ways to start that thought process is, where are your customers, right? Are your customers spending a lot of time online, or do they not? Do your customers use social media, or do they, just use the basic functions like Google? So, I'll talk through an example that, if you're working with a Gen Z millennial population, and Gen Z and millennials want to find a business, a lot of times the first thing that they'll do is they'll flip open Instagram or Facebook and look for the business on Instagram or Facebook. You go to some of the older generations, and and this is by no means the rule, but the first thing they do is they look for something in Google, right? So I think it's really important to understand each customer's entry point to the internet, to discoverability, and where does your business fall on that spectrum? Because there are just so many entry points, and it's really make sure it's like playing defense, right? Like, you want to make sure every area is covered. And there's some really awesome basic free places to start with that, right? Claiming your Google listing. So that whole process of going into Google and typing in your business name, usually Google will recognize that you're a business. You can actually claim that listing and make sure that your hours are updated, that your website link is on there if you already have a site, or just that the description of your business is accurate. I mean, that's one-on-one basic, totally free. Same thing with Facebook and Instagram. Grabbing the Instagram and Facebook names for your business, putting up the basic information of hours, what do you do? So that's really where you start. And then, secondly, I think the next step is really, how much do you want to spend? What's your budget for creating a web presence? And one of the reasons that I mentioned that is to play off one of the things that Jared touched on, is that there are so many platforms out there. And it's really, what we've found working with our customers is it's really hard to understand just at face value, what is the cost, not only initial setup cost, but long-term cost associated with hosting on that platform, or using Shopify, or using a certain type of software. And so it's really, really, really important to do your homework ahead of time, set a budget, and figure out how much you want to spend. I have talked to lots of business owners who said, when they first started out, they said, I need a website. And they set up a website with a company that, wasn't based in the United States. And then they didn't know how to update it going forward. And they, didn't have the budget to maintain that presence. And I think, so starting out with a goal in mind, understanding where your customers are and understanding how you want to reach them is just so critical to determining the right path of how to get online.
Absolutely. I think all those things you said were right on point. Everything from using the free tools that are available to understanding what's your budget and what you really need out of a website. They're all really important. Let's jump into Keith. Keith being a website developer, I'm sure you've seen a whole spectrum of everything from Frontier all the way down. Do you want to talk to us about budgets? I know some of that obviously is confidential, so just ballpark.
No. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you what Frontier paid, but I'll tell you a few things. I do want to, I'll get to pricing in a minute. I think Lizzie hit on a good point, and that's that people can hire an agency. There's no barrier of entry to spin up a site and say that I'm a marketer. So truly vetting, like I would say 8, if not a higher, percentage out of 10 SEO firms are not good for your business, right? I know a lot of companies that charge you recurring fees and they don't do anything. They sign you up for SEMrush, they do your NAP one time, they're paying $19 a month and they're charging you $500. So doing a little bit of understanding. Also, the same can be said for building a site. We've had to rebuild WordPress sites, which is a good content management system that powers over half of the internet, that the customer couldn't maintain. Everything was hard coded. There was literally no way to update the content in WordPress. So understand who you're working with, find that right partner, do your homework. Just like if you were hiring an attorney or a doctor, you want the best. Same with a web developer. and it doesn't have to be expensive. And there actually are some exceptional ones that you could find offshore. It is a needle in a haystack, and if you are not a developer, you're not going to be able to do it. So I wouldn't advocate for trying to outsource this, but finding that right partner and doing your homework. Same with the Google AdWords or somebody that's running paid spend for you. It's really easy to just crunch the data that looks like I'm doing a good job for you, and it could be absolute garbage. So understanding, to Lizzie's point and to Jared's point, understanding your KPIs, measuring to that. Every effort that happens online should on a report equal a dollar amount, right? What does this mean in sales? I don't care about traffic. I care about return on ad spend. With organic traffic, I don't care if, my company is called Zenman, my other company is called Oak Journal. I don't care if I rank first for Oak Journal. I already do. You didn't do anything to move the needle on that. So you really have to be kind of become an expert at these things and be educated, or work with a really trusted partner, kind of like finding a mechanic, right? Nobody has a mechanic they like, and once you find a mechanic you trust, it's gold. I think finding a web partner, a digital partner, is just like finding that mechanic that you can actually trust.
That is so true. When I first started I have 6 websites with Name.com, and I used the website builder and and everything. I didn't start off doing that, but as I become more and more knowledgeable about WordPress, I was able to do it all myself. And I'm saving so much money compared to when I paid someone on Fiverr to build me my first website. So understanding and being decently capable is key, I think, if you're going to do anything beyond a Wix or a WordPress, Wix or a web builder like they have on. Yeah. Jared, what do you think?
That's great, because Lizzie and Keith, what they're doing is reverse engineering, because from where people need to be to where they start. People start with a domain name and then a website, and then they're like, okay, what do I do now? And that's where they're vulnerable to what Keith was talking about. A lot of fly-by-night firms are out there, and what they need to do is what Lizzie was talking about, is like doing that research on Google and how to get yourself listed, and what's worthy traffic, what's your voice, what's your brand. And I think that sounds like a lot. Like this has been in several minutes of conversation, and it can really build up. And I always tell people, iterate, just iterate, get started, because you could get the domain name, start working on a website, or have someone work on that for you. Pay them more than a 6-pack of beer. I'm speaking for all the creatives out there, all right, who didn't have business school. And then at the same time, while that's happening, you could start learning. There's so many great tutorials, so many great people to follow that you can find on social media, and start figuring out the tips and tricks on Google. And it's really an iteration process. I think a lot of people get under a lot of weight right away, and then they don't move on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so you guys all touched on an awesome point, and I think just to further the comment about define your budget, define what you want to spend on this on your web presence, and I think that includes both money and time, right? So I think as a business owner, a lot of the business owners that we work with, because we work with retail brick and mortar stores, they're in their store from 9 to 5 every day. And so they're, dealing with customers all day long, and then they come home at night and have a family and have other things on their agenda that they have to do that are more urgent than sometimes building a web presence. And so I think it's really important to be realistic about, hey, how much time do I really have to either dedicate to building this and maintaining this web presence, or building that skill set to do it on your own? Because I think, the internet has come so far, and there are so many great sites where you can build your own website. But to Keith's point, they're not all created equal. And, you could end up with something that you built on your own, but it took you a lot of time, and it just wasn't, doesn't meet your goals. And so that's, again, it just goes back into this whole, where are your customers and what's your budget? And then using that to sort of as a map or guide for how you proceed.
That's a really good point, because it's not just budgeting your money, it's budgeting your time. Because when you have a limited number of hours in a day and you have kids and you have to make meals and you have businesses and customers to deal with, sometimes, websites fall to the wayside, which is why Keith's in business, because they can pay a web developer to do it for them, do a great job.
Yeah, so just to further expand on the budgeting and being realistic about your budget, I think there's so many, the great thing about the internet today is that there are so many options for people from all different need spectrums. And so if you start with the foundational elements I mentioned, claiming your Google website or your Google listing, there's also your Yelp listing. There's lots of these sort of search aggregator sites that have information about businesses around them. The next step after that is really a lot of these platforms out there, just like Sidewalk, there's a bunch of them across a variety of different industries that have tools available to build your web presence. So Sidewalk, we do local retail. Our niche is brick and mortar retail. If you want to sell your products online and you don't want to build your own e-commerce site, we are perfect for that solution. If you want to sell nationally and you don't want to build your e-commerce site, there's Etsy and Amazon. Those are really, really great options for expanding a national presence. If you're a restaurant, DoorDash, Grubhub, all of those are really great ways to sell online without having to build your own website where customers place orders. OpenTable. Lastly, for services, there's Angie's List, Home Advisor. Those are all dedicated platforms to make sure that businesses can talk about their business, get visibility to groups of customers that are essentially aggregated and paid for by those sites.
Yeah, it's really important to understand the free tools out there before you go out and start spending on things. I did try the free tools. Currently I've said it like 5 times already that I use name.com for everything. For those who aren't familiar with name.com, Jared, why don't you talk about the next step up above the free services that are out there?
Yeah, and if you just mention this 3 more times, you get paid. So you're on route to a check, and we greatly appreciate it. We're working on some budget now. I think a couple of my most favorite online wizardry trick is if you buy a domain name, which you could get for $1.99, you can get I think a .site is $1.99. You can for free forward that to some other online, some web presence. Maybe that's a Facebook page, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. And I think that's an incredible way to get started. And even, maybe you are, someone who doesn't necessarily think you need a website, but you probably should have your contact out there just for your customers' convenience. I'm like, whenever I'm looking to do something, that's the first thing I'm, after I get off Twitter, then I'm looking for it. And just, throw up a free page, and then, the free pages, or even something you might pay for with a Squarespace, for example, the URL isn't going to be really all that memorable. You're going to have squarespace.com/Talus show or whatever, but you could get talus.site for a couple bucks, or whichever domain name works out. And then do the free URL forwarding. So I just think that is the coolest trick out there. You do it back before COVID. I would do a lot of seminars, just helping getting people online, and it was actually kind of nice how few knew about this, because I seemed like I had been sent from the future, because like this exists. And not only that, you could do email forwarding too. So you could be Talus at talusshow.site, and that would go to your AOL account or whatever you might have that wouldn't look so professional. And then there's subdomains too. Those are all free too. And there's an infinite amount, which that is just the dot before the rest of your domain, which would be boss.talus.site. So you could have Lizzie.talus.site, or however, maybe you want each employee has a separate page. But just for the free stuff, I think there's just endless opportunities before you start spending.
Hey, Jared, those are awesome tips. Where can somebody find more information of how to actually do that?
It's funny. We have, if you go to name.com, we have a support page, and you can search URL forwarding is what that's called. And I'm actually updating all our tutorials on that. They could also email me, Jared at name.com. Yeah, so there's a really good back end there. You could search up any of those queries, which would be URL forwarding, or just type in forwarding, and it would probably cover that. Yeah, good question.
Yeah. And if you're a little more technical, if you have their hosting package, you can access all that in cPanel. And it's great because I have the hosting package. I have, like I said, 6 different websites. Each website has 6 different types of emails for each of the domains. And I have 20 different emails that I'm hosting using name.com, all under the same hosting package, which is great.
2 more times. Yeah. I'm really stoked about this. Don't let me stop you. I'm going to get a logo on your sweater. Yeah, that's, and then stepping up the hosting, really, you're looking at, I think, starting at about $4.99 a month, and that just blows a wide open your opportunities of being able to store and build and create emails and be super professional. And I think that's pretty cool. If you're starting a business and you're looking at overhead and you're spending, maybe $10, $12 a year on a domain and $5 a month on hosting, that's a pretty good start.
Keith, what do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I love the idea that now there are other things versus the .coms. I mean, one of the biggest challenges a lot of my customers have come over the years is got this new business idea. I can't wait to do it. We've got a logo design, we've got our name and everything, and there's no way they can get a URL that's even closely associated to it. So absolutely love the flexibility, the way that that's opened up. Although I have a good friend that owns, what is Reberry's company? Huge domains. He's got 2.5 million .coms. It's quite the good business. His office is in Rhino. So I do have a resource if you do want that, .com, but it's expensive. I mean, you're paying, they're sitting on all these. It's almost like squatting on virtual land and just waiting, although the appreciation seems to happen much faster. So, sorry, Jeff, I do like what Jared has going on as far as being able to do, like web.cool or something like that. We just had a client that did rustico.restaurant, and it's Rustico Restaurante in Telluride. So using those different domains, totally agree, and love the flexibility, and huge fan of them.
If you still want the .com, Keith might be able to get you a discount with Jeff. I don't know. I'm just speaking up.
He does not give me much of a discount.
See, those are the .com guys. Yeah,
yeah. But it's it's an interesting business to see, and it's seen how that's evolved. But there's so many people that have these great ideas, and that .com, and geez, Jared, you probably know better than me, but I think it's been more than a decade that every single word or 2 or 3 word combination has been gone. So you can't really come up with a business. Hence, people making up, like Ibotta was a client of ours. Mm-hmm. That's a made up word, right? Brian couldn't get a domain that he wanted to associate with the original concept for the name of the business. And so now it's, Ibotta soda or Ibotta whatever. Yeah. But Ibotta was a made up word that he could get the .com because it wasn't being parked.
And now that made up word is taken. So we're even running out of imaginary words.
Yeah.
So,
all those are gone.
There's a lot of options, though. There are a lot of new options. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I was stoked to get a 6-letter domain name recently.com for one of my new companies. So I was stoked that it was even available. But one thing I did want to point out, before you go out and spend a bunch of money with Keith's friend, search the USPTO website and make sure that there's not a trademark already on the name that you're looking to use. Because just because the website's available does not mean that there's not a trademark already existing on that name.
And would you suggest too, and I actually was just working with someone, and she right away got a trademark on her domain. And I don't know, maybe Keith, Lizzie, I don't know if anybody who has insight on that.
I do. Being sued right now.
Do you recommend getting trademark right away on your business idea?
Yes. Trademark on the name for sure. Patent is very dependent on the type of business that you're trying to do.
Because to Lizzie's point, if you don't have money to do a basic website, a trademark is a big step. So I do think there's a tipping point you need to get to before you're investing in that. And Talis, to your point, if you had that name and been using it earlier than them, even if they came after you, you can come back and say, well, we've existed longer. I had an interesting example. I own Zenman is my main company. 5 years ago, to sort of a similar reason, we started Bigfoot Web, which is Squarespace websites. You're a small business, you need something. Instead of spending, 50 to $250,000 with Zenman, we could do something for a few $1,000s for you. And we are Bigfoot Web. Our logo is a Yeti. There's somewhere back there's probably a Yeti footprint right amongst all the crap, right? But bigfootprint.com came after us. They're an SEO company, and they sent me a letter, and they're like, well, we've been using this for longer. We want you to change, and blah 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 blah. And it was just the standard, like, I'm going to sue you attorney letter. And it is very good, just like having a good web developer or good SEO person, to have a good attorney. So quickly had my attorney review it, and they're like, there is absolutely no case. You are Bigfoot. They are Footprint. These are two totally different things. So I sent them a really nice email back. Was like, I appreciate the, letting me know. I'm aware of you guys. Would love to collaborate with you. If you ever need help with a Squarespace site, that's what we do. You guys do SEO. We're a Yeti. You're a Foot. I think it's really a cool name, and wish you guys the best of luck. I'm over getting angry and pissed at people as I get older and hopefully closer to enlightenment. I've let go of a lot of anger. Earlier, me probably would have spent $100,000 on attorneys, but you don't need to. Yeah. But that point, there's a tipping point, and I have this product, Oak Journal, I've been working on for 5 years. Now we're selling a ton of these. I am not putting it for sale on Amazon until our trademark is in place, and that is that threshold of like risk reward.
Yeah. This is I feel like we could do a whole podcast just on this topic alone. I mean, there's trademark, there's copyright, there's patent. All of these things can get really complicated really quickly. One of the resources that I would suggest is most law schools have legal clinics. And so if you're getting into a situation where you get a letter that is totally freaks you out, and you don't understand it, my first recommendation, especially if you don't have a good lawyer already that you trust, would be to go to one of these clinics at a law school. Lots of local law schools have them. I mean, pretty much any law school has them. And it's a really great place to start, where people are energetic. They're not, the students haven't passed the bar yet, but they'll be able to sort of guide you through those preliminary things. And then just generally, small business resources usually have a lot of legal experts on hand. So, check with all those places. To your point, Keith, just because you get a letter doesn't mean they're right. So, just make sure you don't, let other people scare you with this legal stuff. It's really manageable, and with the right support and right trusted resources, you can get through it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lizzie, because you don't want to be intimidated by this. And it's because it's actually pretty rare that I've seen in domain industry. And I see a lot of people that they've had the domain before someone else's trademark, and they get to keep the domain.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's more often than not, you're not going to have to deal with that. And a cease and desist letter is kind of a badge of honor, to be honest. So you're doing something.
So Keith, let's talk about businesses that might need a more robust solution than Name.com or Sidewalk. Talk about what you would recommend people look into before embarking on the road of a complex website.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, Talis. Understanding your needs, and then making sure you find an agency that has the right tool. So there are a lot of firms out there that, if I'm an SEO shop, I'm a hammer and your problem is a nail, and that's it.
Keith,
but the reality is,
can I ask you to explain SEO for a second?
Oh, sure. SEO is search engine optimization. So there's a big gamut on search engine optimization. There's white hat, black hat, on page, off page. Yeah, we'll go into this, and then we'll come back, Talis, to your conversation. Is that okay? SEO, worse than finding a good web developer, is finding a good SEO agency. There are two parts of this, right? The first is making sure your website is built correctly. So that's making sure that the structure is correctly, and then the on-page stuff like page titles, meta descriptions, which factor into click-through rate, not really, but that factors into SEO, H1s. It's not quantum physics, but there's some complexity to it. So you have to understand, to your point, your target audience, what they're searching for, what those keywords are, and then you do the on-page stuff. And then the other part of it is what most people will say is their quote unquote secret sauce. If your SEO company tells you they have secret sauce, you should run away in the opposite direction as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they call themselves gurus or ninjas, just back away.
Yeah. There is no secret sauce, right? What they're doing is actually maliciously manipulating the algorithm by creating a bunch of backlinks. And if you get caught doing that, you can end up in Google hell. What Google wants you to do is create new.
What are backlinks? Sorry, not to.
Oh, no worries.
Technical, yeah.
So a backlink is somebody that links to your site. So a good example, a few months ago, was published in Inc. So they link back to Zenman.com. Inc.com is an authority. So Google looks at it like, wow, if this website that we think has authority is linking back to Zenman when we're talking about websites, they must know about websites. Other things that factor into it are how long somebody spends on my content, right? If I create a bunch of clickbait, which I hate that term, but getting people to click on my site and then there's no valuable content there. So you have to deliver on your promise. People have to spend time digesting your content. So a good white hat SEO firm will understand your customer, what they're searching for, and then they'll create not clickbait, but lead magnets. They'll create valuable content that your customers are searching for at whatever part of their buyer's journey they're on. Are they just aware, like, hey, I'm searching for a car, or no, I'm like actually fine tuning between which dealership am I going to buy from? So then you can craft that content around that. What a black hat agency will do is they create another acronym, PBN, a private blog network, or they have these link building campaigns where they'll have old, mamasquilting.org. Used to be a quilting site 10 years ago. They bought this domain at auction for my friend Jeff Reberry, and now they stood up a blog on it, and they're talking about technology or fashion. And worst case, they're probably blending a bunch of clients together. They're having somebody create crap content that they're telling you're not allowed to see, and then they're publishing on behalf of your business. So not only are they doing a bad job, because if you get caught doing this and manipulating the algorithm, you can become de-indexed. And then we got to go back to Jared and find a new domain name and a new brand and rebuild everything from scratch. So you need to find a trusted resource. And I would advocate that you actually write that content yourself. There's been some great success stories where people are just dedicated to it, right? Like Lizzie writes every single day, 600 to 800 words on local business and tools and techniques and what they can do. That's going to help. Now, that being said, that's a really, really long-term play, right? When you're doing SEO, that's the long game. So if you need quick hits, then that's either paid, which again, we've got to find the trusted person, or it's tricks that you can do on social. The only word I detest more, actually, I do detest this word more than clickbait, is personal brand. I hate the word personal brand. If you are not a silhouette on a shoe, you are not a personal brand. You have your word, you have your reputation, you have, your authentic self. But if you're building a personal brand, and this is just my humble opinion, but like Charles Barkley said, I may be wrong, but I doubt it. In my humble opinion, if you're building a personal brand, you are exaggerating, you're bullshitting, you're coming up with reasons why I should trust you instead of just shaking my hand and committing and following through. So find somebody that'll fist bump you during COVID, but that will follow through on their word, right? And don't ever trust somebody that's like, hey, do this for me and I'll send you so much leads and I'll hook you up so much. Like that's going to happen organically. If I do good work with Jared or Lizzie, Jared, thank you for taking care of Brian. Can you please, Sam needs something, like Jared's my guy, right? So it's building, people do business with people they trust and like.
Yeah, people they know and trust. Yeah, I would just say the number 3 word on that list would be influencer. Influencer, number 3 on the most detested word list on this current episode of the show. I just made that call, and I think Keith should have a show called Fireside Chats with Keith about search engine optimization.
I'll listen into that.
Yeah,
me too. That was really informative.
And about what Keith said too is that it's the cool thing with search engine optimization and how it has evolved is I used to write SEO copy back in like 2008, and it was a soulless, noun-ridden, ghastly attempt at communication. And now you can be yourself. Like you could just talk about your expertise and help your standing on the internet because the YouTubes and the Googles of the world and the other search engines and are seeing that you're relevant. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm going to just kind of rephrase because, coming from a non-tech background, when I started my website, all of these words, I was like, what is SEO? What is all this stuff? So Keith, what I'm hearing you say is that SEO is really key for discoverability through search engines. So it's not enough to build a website or put a domain out there. You actually have to engineer this whole, space, which is called search engine optimization. And that sounds like can be either very complicated or very obscure, but that's why it's really important to work with people you trust, because not only is it complicated, but it can backfire. Is that what I heard you say?
Beyond backfire, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure Jared can experience this too. Somebody gets de-indexed and put in Google hell, you're not getting found. That's detrimental to your business. It's like being a brand that's on Amazon, and all of a sudden Amazon's like, oh, you know what, we like what Jared does, so we're just going to sell it, and he never shows up in search anymore. Now there's a preferred Amazon product. You just disappear. So 100% finding that trusted resource.
What's interesting about that too is that whole, you don't call it engine optimization, but that search optimization also exists within a lot of these platforms like Etsy and Amazon and even Sidewalk. The most important thing is, when somebody puts a word into a search bar, that search bar isn't going to search through photos and notice that you're selling a green shirt, right? You actually have to write, this is a green shirt. It comes in many sizes. Wear it to your next party, and use all those words to really, really. So I think, Keith, I love what you said about writing and blogging and, writing your content, because it's just so important to really put down in words what you have on the internet, because that's how people find you.
Absolutely. And on that topic, I guess two other jargon phrases that either Jared or Keith, I'd love you guys to elaborate on, is meta tags and just the description that you're using for each page.
Yeah, I would defer to Keith on that more technically. I've always been used for content, and just being a part of the conversation and getting companies included in what's going on and what's being discussed online and making ourselves relevant. But Keith, if you have more technical insight.
On the on page, there's a few things I would focus on. So one is the page title, and there are character limits on all of these. So you want to be really mindful of putting your keywords in a way that makes sense in your page title. Then is your meta tags and meta description. Okay, meta description, that technically doesn't factor into SEO, but it does. What it does factor into is your click-through rate. So when somebody searches for, best domain name provider and name.com pops up number one, it's the description underneath them that we all read that like, oh, which is the one I'm going to click through. So it actually does in that way sort of secondarily factor into optimization. And then there is, like to Lizzie said, every image needs to be named correctly. So if you go on oakjournal.com, the picture of the orange journal isn't 78592.jpg. It's not even Oak Journal _ front page. It's Oak Journal _ productivity _ or productivity journal _ orange, right? I'm putting the keywords that I know matter into that. And then another thing to be really important of is we have to make sure that things are optimized not only for those of us that have vision and hearing, but those of us that don't. So making sure that the alt tags and the all of the things that are in place for the visually impaired, and that all of the content is readable by screen readers, so that everybody has that same access to this content.
Isn't that cool that being a good person is now helpful online? I mean, you're making it accessible to everyone helps your search engine optimization and makes you more relevant. So I'm happy to see that SEO grow in that direction.
Absolutely. One thing that we haven't talked about was malicious actors. How can someone protect their site or their business from malicious people out there? Luckily, with Lizzie's platform, I would assume that because it's on its own sandbox, you don't have to worry about that as much. Is that right, Lizzie?
Yeah, I mean, so from our perspective on our platform, we're constantly monitoring the content. We're making sure that, we've got our terms and conditions, and we're constantly making sure that people are not posting things on our website that they shouldn't be. I think that, one of the things that comes with listing on somebody else's platform is you kind of get that as part of the package. Etsy, Amazon, they all have people constantly monitoring to make sure that your item, your Hello Kitty doesn't show up next to, adult products, right? So that's one of the benefits. I think, separately, there's a couple other areas of malicious actors. I mean, there's cyber security issues, there's bots, there's phishing, there's a lot of this stuff. So again, that's one of the things that, when you tag onto another platform, they provide a lot of that support. But it's still something everybody needs to be aware of. I mean, spoofing, phishing, everybody gets those funky emails. If anything looks strange or looks amiss, it's always good to double check. If you get an email from your friend and it's from an email address that you don't recognize, call them up and make sure hey, did you send me this email? Because people are all over the place, and especially with COVID and a lot of people being home and not working, unfortunately, that's given people who do have bad intent more time to spend on the internet, trying to get inside people's computers. So
yeah, it's scary. I had I had a DDoS attack on one of my websites. So we had over 1,000 hits from Russia in like a period of 2 hours. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
The amount of time that we have to spend on security and training people with the fraud and dealing with fraud. I mean, our angriest customers are typically ones who were involved in spamming or fraud, and we have to suspend them. But it's rampant, and it's a constant battle, and it would be great if it didn't exist because we could focus on more innovation. And it's funny though, with security, there's this two-edged sword, if you will, because I think that's a sword anyway, but there are two edges. You have the scammers, and then you just have terrible products out there that scammers are selling to protect you from scammers. So it's like Lizzie said, it's great that a lot of these all-in-one, the Shopify's, etc., come with that security, but it's really something you got to be careful of. And like she said, the emails, if you're starting a business, you're going to be looking for engagement, you're going to be looking for conversations, and you are ripe to click on things that are not going to be good for you or your business.
Never click on things.
Yeah, just don't.
In emails.
We get a ton of clients. It's funny, Jared, because this one of the most frustrating spams for our clients are people that are trying to phish and have them change their hosting or domain registration, where it's like, hey, your domain's up for renewal, and they end up accidentally transferring it to some hack company away from a good registrar like these guys. So I just tell people, if you're ever in doubt, just forward it to me. I'll let you know whether or not you should click on it. And then the last one that we didn't even talk about that's infuriating is reputation management, right? We've had clients that have had people go in, put horrible reviews, like an orthodontist client of ours years ago had somebody that was never a customer give an awful review. And then 48 hours later, he got hit up with the ability from this company that does reputation management to fix that review. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is just the most unethical. I don't know. Karma's a B. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Well, and just to add to what Keith said about online reputation management, and we get these really angry people that we've had to suspend. And of course, they go to every different review site. They say these ridiculous things. And all we were doing is try to protect our customers or even them from destroying themselves. And I was couple drinks in on a Sunday, and I was like, I know what we need to do. And we had this great customer support team, incredibly smart people who have to deal with the infinitude of things that can go wrong on the internet. And often people compliment them, and we had this little internal kudos thing. I really liked talking to Max. She was great. And I was like, we need to make that external. So we started this program where we incentivize everybody at the company. Like if somebody gives you a compliment or you're in that situation, just ask them, say, can you go? And can you just go to a trust pilot, or can you go and say, and they do, they really like it. And it's turned everything around for us as far as online reputation management. Because we have these longtime customers that say, I love working with you, but did you see this thing on? And we're like, we know we had to suspend that guy and he's been mad for 8 years, but we've been able to kind of turn that tide, and just by simply asking. And I think if you're starting out a business, it's good to have your friends help you out. I mean, legitimately, not just happy. Hey, could you say something good about me because you like my shirt? But no, I mean, like, if you're doing business, and like I know Talus uses this, that's a great opportunity for me now to say, Dallas, I don't know if you want to write something, that would be great.
Yeah, and further to that, I know most of the people listening to this are small businesses, and we're all small businesses, and I think it's really important for us to have each other's back too. So, as a small business owner, be conscious of, when you do go to a restaurant, you have a great time, put yourself in their shoes and write a good review, right? But put yourself out there for other people in your community.
Yeah, I would just the word community. Oh, sorry there, but I was just gonna say the word community is so important, not only for being found in life and online, but also for within your business community and giving back to that community, and not just buzzwording it, but actually having results that you could share, because you do get back in exponential amounts of, for lack of a better word, online affection, or however you like, just and word of mouth, where you could grow. And like a lot of times it's easy for me to be a recluse in the murder basement here, but I know for the company and for my own, God forbid, personal brand, as a stand-up comic and MC and stuff, I have to, I'm just part of those conversations and offering myself to the community.
We got to talk stand-up comic offline, Jared. I'm going to send you. I tried it one time. I'll share the link with you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I can't wait.
Since everyone's isolated at home, I hope everyone's watching this and taking some of the tips that Jared, Lizzie, and Keith have offered. If you have any future questions or want to reach out to any of our guests, starting with Lizzie, why don't you share how our audience can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so the best way to get in contact is just go to our website, www.shopsidewalk.com.
I'm going there right now.
We have a little chat feature, so if you send us a message, we've got a pretty small team, so we're all around, and we're really excited to help small businesses. If you have questions directly, you can email our team at hello@shopsidewalk.com, or you can email me personally at Lizzie, Lizzy, at shopsidewalk.com.
Jared?
Yeah, I'm just checking out shopsidewalk.com. I need to learn more at this. But yeah, we are name.com, and we have an incredible support team, and we have a whole support page you can search. And if you have questions, you could, there's I think it's name.com / I think you can just go, what the heck is it? Name.com /ticket, I believe, for support ticket. But you can just go to the support page and there's links there. And my email is jared@name.com.
Sorry about that. Real easy too. Zenman, and it's keith@zenman.com. So if you remember Zenman, you can find me. Yeah.
And is that your business? That's is zenman.com. That's
it is, yeah. It's I think I could say this now, but I'm actually in the process of selling it. So I've had Zenman for 24 years. Started out, I'm Buddhist, and it was just me and working at a desk under my stairs in my apartment.
Like Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. I didn't have a door though. It was just
okay.
But yeah, very similar, and no Dobby. But and then it grew into this big thing that was incredibly stressful, and it spawned this sister agency, Bigfoot Web, and I started this project 5 years ago, the Oak Journal, which is a product that helps you with positive psychology, neuroscience to be the best version of yourself. And it's truly my ikigai, my life's purpose. And so, yeah, I'm exiting the agency world.
Agency, that's the word I was trying to think. So you've been doing websites and online agency.
I have been building websites, Jared, since the aspect ratio was 640 by 480.
Whoa. Wow. And you can just hold it.
That's how old I am. Yeah.
Yeah. You've kept well. I could use some of your hair.
I built some flash sites back in the day, that's for sure.
Oh, man. Well,
this was my midlife crisis. I just stopped cutting it when I turned 40. So
yeah. Well done.
Totally interrupted you earlier when you were starting to talk about when do people need a more robust website and how should they go about working with an agency?
That's unique for everybody. You know, the one thing I was going to say, and this is probably the perfect time. Thanks for bringing that up, Lizzie. Talis, you'd ask how much does a website cost? And a website, that's like asking how much does a house cost, right? I can build you a yurt for $5,000 that's technically going to qualify. And we have clients that have spent over $500,000, right? So there's a really big range. What you need to do is figure out your specific needs and then build an MVP, another acronym, a minimum viable product. What's the leanest way that you can get online, validate your business, and then just scale it? You know, the great thing about all of the tools that exist today are they're Lego blocks that you can continue to build on, right? Now, there might be a point when we launched Oak, we launched with a Squarespace, one product e-commerce. Jared mentioned earlier, Shopify is, I think, definitively the best e-commerce platform if you've got multiple products. So after 18 months, we graduated, right? So we let the business needs dictate the platform versus the other way around. The one thing I would say is be hesitant of a freelancer that built a proprietary system because you're going to get hosed.
Yeah, that's really great.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing that we haven't discussed yet is migrating a project from one developer to another. So like, let's say you were doing it through a contractor, but then you wanted to move it in-house. Keith and Jared, are there any tips that you'd recommend for making sure that you're not losing your initial investment?
Yeah, I mean, so you're going, you have one developer and you're moving to just a whole different house to maintain the website.
Yeah, whether you're moving from one house to another, or bringing it in-house, or moving it from in-house to outhouse. Outhouse,
but just from my perspective, this is just a very specific thing. But you need to register your domain. You need to own the domain. You don't want to deal with that. If you want to move, that's going to be hell. And I don't know how many domain divorces we have to deal with every week, and it gets very ugly. You need to have your backups and access to all your assets, and then you can make that decision, because otherwise that's where you're going to find it to be very and unexpectedly expensive.
It's amazing. You'd be amazed at how many businesses that we've worked with where I've said, oh, hey, we're locked out of this part of your website. And they're like, oh, hold on, I need to text my web developer to get the password key to get this. And it's just, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I think one of the things that I've seen is a lot of situations where people, the web developer or marketing agency actually like kind of keeps the keys to the kingdom as a proprietary thing, and then they don't empower you to make edits on your own, and don't empower you to make, and they upsell you, right? They say, okay, you want to, change your calendar from February to January, that's going to be $100, right? When it's just 2 clicks. So
3 words when you're hiring any freelancer: work for hire. That needs to be in your contract. That means I own it. Whether you designed it, you drew it, you painted it, it's pixels. Work for hire means I own the work. I am paying you, and at the end of said project, I own the result. If it doesn't say that, and we've had projects get pulled from friends of ours that they didn't have that in, and they wanted to own the code. They were doing this multi-million-dollar project, but they wanted to own aspects of it. A lot of people don't like that, right? You want to own the work that's done. And then to Lizzie's point, the way that we approach it with our clients is we're going to empower you to never need us again, with the exception of, maybe there's WordPress updates that happen quarterly, some SSL updates. But if you want to put a new video in, add a page, photos, change a word, you don't need a developer if you had a good developer. That being said, we've got a lot of our clients, like Frank Bonanno, we've worked with them for 15 years. It takes him more time to send me the menu to update it than it does to update the menu. But that's Frank's workflow. He feels like it's the best and highest use of his time to not be logging into the back end of the website. So, find a partner that's got the right solution. And then when you're making the transition, to Jared's point, breakups can be challenging, and it depends on what are the circumstances of why you're firing the agency. If it's just, hey, we outgrew you, we loved working with you, but we needed an enterprise solution. You don't do Shopify, we're moving to that. Or most cases, it's not that. It's been underperformance and it's a bad breakup. And then it's figuring out how you make that transition with as least pain as possible and making sure that the partner you're bringing in, plays well with others, right? You want them to not be a dick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like software development, you want to make sure you have the code, right? And that you actually possess or have access to the repository, because I've had a developer try and hold that hostage until I signed a amended contract that like tripled his salary. And that's actually called making someone sign something under duress, which Vanilla on Ice knows all about from Suge Knight.
Yeah. And I see a lot of people fall into that space where they don't have the logins, or they don't know what the domain, like how the setup works, because they label themselves as not a tech person. And what I would say is that, what's amazing about tech today is it's really not rocket science. And it has evolved in such a user-friendly way that I think to everybody out there who calls themselves not a tech person, but is a business owner, it's a lot harder to run your business than it is to run a website, just a simple website. So, what I would say is, trust yourself, spend a little time to understand what's going on underneath the hood with your web developer so that you really are empowered, or work with Keith so that he teaches you everything.
He's out of the game now. I mean, unless you want to go surfing in the Longmont with him, then I'm not sure if you're going to get a piece of the Keith.
There's huge waves in Sloan's Lake.
One thing that we haven't discussed yet is the different needs of a company that is a service company versus a company that is a physical product retail company. Jared, do you want to discuss what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when you're thinking about the web and what's sold to us a lot as far as the Internet of Things is retail, but that the website for a service business, I mean, if you're a plumber or you're delivering or whatever, a lot of times you're not even looking at having to incorporate e-commerce there. And I think that's it can be a simple web presence. You can build from there. But we've talked to a lot of people who they're like, listen, I'm focused on building furniture, or I just want to drive truck or whatever, but they also need to have that web presence. And that could be a simple, one-page website with some basic search engine optimization and just, and maybe hopefully a really good memorable domain name, which is easier to get now. And that will just, get their hours out there and their, their mantra or motto or something like that to provide some comfort to potential customers.
Yeah, I think Jared, that's awesome. And what you hit on there is really in a big picture is, do you want your website to be informational, or do you want to be transactional? So do you want to provide information about your business to your customers, or do you actually want to start to transact on your website? And so for retail, that's e-commerce. For restaurants, that's booking reservations or actually placing orders. For service businesses, that's could be as much as, just booking a calendar appointment, right? Booking a free consultation. And so, again, there's so many tools out there, but I think that's a key differentiation of, are you going to throw up a page that just provides information, or are you going to throw up a page that actually leads to a transaction? And that's a decision point you have to make, and that goes along with the amount of time and money that you have to invest in that platform.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would add is clarity, right? When visiting a website, or I use this when I'm going into a meeting, I think about, and I'm intentional before, how do I want the person to feel about their interaction with me? Same with the website, and what's the end result? So if it's filling out a contact form, or it's picking up the phone, or clicking purchase on a product, what's the end result, and what's the emotion I want that person to have interacting with me in person or online?
Well, Keith, you mentioned this earlier, like people do business with people they know and trust, or something along those lines. And that's always been my goal with name.com, is trying to give it a bricks and mortar feel with some personality. So, because there's a lot of just glowing blue interfaces out there, and especially in the domain and hosting world, that people they've been burned in the past, and they want it somewhere they can trust. So, creating that. And I think that baby steps are steps too. That's something you can work towards, but getting your personality out there, which can help with SEO as well, whether that's video or blogging, however, but just getting your expertise out there so people feel that they know that they can trust you.
Absolutely.
And to your point, Jared, last point, but happy to keep going. Pick the platform, right? So you mentioned two things, like, am I blogging? Am I doing video? And a lot of people, just like with a website, they get overwhelmed with their marketing, or they feel like they have to do all of these things on social. If you do need to be on social, choose one thing and own it. So, and choose the thing that you're comfortable with. Maybe Jared, because of his stand-up and his rapping ability, feels way more comfortable on video than I do. I would rather be writing and not on video. So I'm going to choose, Medium or LinkedIn, or a platform that makes sense to drive traffic. But, choose one and then do a killer job with that. My friend Mark Gutman has this concept of half-built bridges, and a lot of people get excited and they build this half-built bridge to something, the promised land, when the reality is, well, if I just build, all right, I'm going to do Medium, I'm going to do blogging, I'm going to own that, and I build that bridge, there's an ROI, I reach that pot of gold, and now I have more resources and more time to build these additional bridges. But there's a complete bridge, not a bunch of half-built bridges to start.
And that ties in with your audience. What you can narrow down and get that total niche audience, and then grow out from there. But the more narrow it is, the more opportunity there is for people to understand and relate to it.
One thing that I always like to have at the beginning of my websites is email collect. And you guys want to discuss a call to action?
Yeah. I mean, a CTA call to action is essential, no matter what the point of conversion is. And you don't know, there's a great website, What Test Worked, I think, where they test a ton of different calls to action, whether it's button color, what it is. So, you need to have those calls to action, and then you need to continue to refine them. Doing one small change might have an enormous increase on conversion. So constantly A/B testing. Now we're getting into like the super advanced side, right? You might just have your website up for a month and change the button to be something else and look at it month over month. But there's lots of ways you can do it. There's also a ton of free tools. Jared, who probably has more visibility into some of these, that could just help give you guidance on what is converting, so you can do more of that.
But yeah, just call to action, super important. What people have a lot of options, a ton of options out there. How are you going to get them involved? And in our game in domains, it's that first year is usually cheap, and then renewal goes up and up.
I love it. Jared and Keith, you guys had amazing points, and I can't remember who said this, but focus on ROI, right? So when you think about call to action, keep it in line with ROI, right? Like, what is your end goal? If you're not seeing results, and you're not seeing a ROI from the time that you're spending on the web, give yourself, and somebody said this earlier too, a chance to iterate, but then, make changes, right? So if you're not seeing and delivering results, tweak it, adjust, because that's the whole point of you being online. It's not to check the box and say, oh yeah, check, I have a website. No, this is an investment for your business, and you should be seeing results from that. If you're not, it's time to iterate or pivot.
That's what I meant to talk about is with KPI. What are the things you want to see grow, and that will help hone the whole your whole process, because you're being able to target on what you want to see grow within your business.
Before we go, I just wanted to ask Jared one more time to share the promotional information for the free domains that Name.com has been nice enough to offer the people here in Colorado.
Yeah, name.com/energize, and there's a promo code there, and that's good for a wide selection of free domain names. And I think I cut all our services at least 50%. So really, really good deals on all our hosting packages, our website builder, and our WordPress site builder.
So I would say either if you don't want to build your own e-commerce website, or you want to augment your existing e-commerce website with another platform that can reach local customers, you can visit us at www.shopsidewalk.com. We also have a lot of resources on our website of just the basic 101s. If you've never sold products online before, there's a lot of tips and tricks and DIY stuff that you can do, and we've got a whole guide up on our website of all of that information will be helpful for you regardless if you list on Sidewalk or not. But yes, there's so many options out there. We're a mission-driven business, and we're really about helping small business regardless if you partner with us. So what I would say to you is, if you're a retail business or a restaurant business or any type of business and you have questions, we have small businesses at the core of what we do, and so we're happy to share resources, send you to our friends. So reach out.
That was very informative for me, and I'm sure it was for our audience as well. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to connecting with all of you guys in the near future.
Yeah, thanks so much.